Can you imagine anything more profoundly unsettling than a child committing, a horrific act of violence? It really challenges our whole understanding of innocence, doesn't it?
It really does.
We've heard stories like Mary Bell back in the 60s. She was only 10 years old, responsible for the deaths of 2 toddlers, even mutilating one. Just chilling.
Yeah, it's incredibly difficult to process that kind of thing, how society even begins to grapple with it.
Exactly. But what happens when something just as disturbing unfolds, but this time, it's right as the modern internet is sort of finding its feet.
Yeah.
Creating this whole new kind of unprecedented infamy for the person involved.
It's true. And when you mention Nagasaki, it's hard not to immediately think of tragedy given its history.
Right.
And sadly, the story we're going to talk about today, it fits right into that somber picture, adding another difficult layer to the city's story.
That's right. So today, we're going to embark on a deep dive into what became known as the Sasebo Slashing. Our mission here is to unpack the raw facts of the crime itself, look into the desperate search for answers that followed, and importantly, examine how the early internet transformed this real-life tragedy into a global, frankly unsettling meme.
Mm-hmm.
This deep dive should shed some light on how society reacted back then and the lasting, uncomfortable questions it raised. Questions that still echo today, especially about our digital world. So the day was June 1st, 2004. Picture this: Okubo Elementary School in Sasebo, a city within Japan's Nagasaki prefecture. It seemed like a totally ordinary lunch break for a 6th grade class.
Just a normal school day.
Yeah, nothing seemed off until the teacher noticed 2 of her students, 2 girls, were missing. Unusual maybe, but not, instant panic.
Sure.
But just next door, in an empty classroom, something truly horrific was happening. And then suddenly one of the missing girls reappeared. She was covered in blood. And she was holding a bloodied box cutter. The teacher's first thought, understandably, was, oh my God, this little girl has hurt herself.
Right, self-harm, maybe.
But then the girl said 5 words that just sent a chill down everyone's spine. This isn't my blood.
Wow. At that moment, the grim reality just crashed down. The other missing girl, 12-year-old Satomi Mitrai, she was found face down in a pool of her own blood.
Oh, God.
She had this deep 4-inch gash on her neck, plus several other cuts, likely defensive wounds on her arms and hands. School staff, paramedics, they tried frantically, but there was just nothing they could do. Satomi bled to death right there.
On the classroom floor.
Yeah. Meanwhile, the girl responsible, who, because of Japanese law protecting minors, was legally just called Girl A, she was quickly taken in by the police, and that's when the full horrifying story started to come out.
And when she confessed, it was just chilling, wasn't it?
Yeah.
What did the police learn about those moments, especially that gap after the attack?
Well, sobbing, Girl A explained how she'd lured Satomi into the classroom. Just a simple, come here for a second. Got Satomi inside, sat her down.
Right.
Then Girl A drew the curtain shut, stood behind Satomi, put her hands over Satomi's eyes, and then just drove the box cutter deep into her throat.
Oh my goodness.
The attack continued as Satomi struggled. Girl A kept going. But the part that's truly chilling, just hard to comprehend, is that Girl A didn't immediately run for help.
Yeah.
She didn't alert anyone.
Right, that gap you mentioned.
Exactly. There was this shocking, silent 15-minute gap where Girl A just stood there and watched Satomi bleed out before she finally went to get help.
The community must have been absolutely stunned.
Yeah.
Just confused. How could an 11-year-old girl do something so calculated, so malicious?
Yeah.
The premeditation by someone so young. Mm-hmm. It's almost impossible to get your head around. And that really is the core question here. The why. Why did this happen?
It's incredibly complex, and honestly, there are no easy answers. Girl A herself, she claimed Satomi had bullied her online, made mean comments.
Okay, so there was a claim of motive, at least.
Yes, but as you said, this wasn't some spur-of-the-moment rage. Girl A actually premeditated the murder, planned it out over the weekend before, even weighed her options.
Weighing options at 11.
Yeah, and obviously these girls were just 11 and 12. Most childhood conflicts, they just don't end in murder. Parents, authorities, everyone was desperately struggling for a clear answer.
And she seemed normal at school.
By all accounts, yeah. School staff considered her normal, no obvious behavioral red flags. Now, during her trial, she was diagnosed with a developmental disorder, but even that diagnosis was challenged by other doctors.
So even the medical experts couldn't fully agree on a definitive why. How does that kind of disagreement affect things? The public understanding maybe that moral panic you hinted at earlier.
That's a really good point, because look, even if a diagnosis was definitively correct, it would be totally inaccurate, irresponsible even, to just blame the crime solely on that condition.
Right, it's never that simple.
Never. There's no single cause. Now, in 2005, a Japanese journalist, Atsuko Kusanagi, she published a book about the case. And in it, she raised accusations against girl A's father, suggesting possible abuse, which he strongly denied. But even if that were true, it still doesn't give us a simple solution, right? Most people who experience trauma don't become killers.
No, of course not.
So when you have these profound tragedies and clear answers are just missing, societies often fall back on what we call a moral panic, this sort of collective, sometimes irrational fear about some perceived threat.
And looking for something, anything to blame.
Exactly. A desperate, often unproductive search for external scapegoats.
And in this case, like so many others, Girl A's interests, her hobbies, they got put under the microscope, didn't they? And blamed. Her love for horror, specifically.
That's right. Her room reportedly had novels like The Ring and One Missed Call, popular Japanese horror.
Yeah, J-horror was big then.
But what really grabbed headlines was her interest in Battle Royale, the novel, the film. You know, the story about a class forced to fight to the death.
Yeah, controversial one for sure.
Definitely. The Nagasaki Shinbun newspaper reported she was a fan of both the book and the film. And chillingly, just the month before the murder, in May, she'd actually written Battle Royale fanfiction.
Wow.
The same article also mentions something else bookmarked on her computer, an internet urban legend called the Red Room Creepypasta.
Creepypasta. Early internet horror stories, basically.
Exactly. For anyone unfamiliar, creepypasta is like internet folklore, horror stories shared online. The Red Room specifically is about this pop-up ad curse that supposedly leads to suicide.
So internet fiction.
Pure internet fiction, yeah. But it was just another thing piled onto the list of things to blame. It's such a common reaction, isn't it? Parents pointing fingers at media, games, books.
Totally. But as you said, blaming these things, it doesn't really prevent future incidents, does it? Is that impulse just pointless? Or does it serve some psychological need for the community, maybe?
That's an interesting way to put it. It might offer some temporary, maybe psychological comfort for a community trying to process the unexplainable.
A way to make sense of the senseless?
Perhaps. But it rarely helps us understand the deeper, more complex factors, and it often distracts from them. And, you know, this wasn't happening in a vacuum in Japan at the time.
Right, there was other cases too.
Precisely. Just the year before, 2003, in a nearby town, a 12-year-old boy was accused of kidnapping, molesting, and murdering a toddler.
Oh my God.
And back in 2001, Japan had actually lowered its age of criminal responsibility from 16 down to 14.
Why did they do that?
That change came after a really high-profile case in 1997 where a 14-year-old actually beheaded a 10-year-old boy. Just horrific.
Unbelievable.
So the Sasebo Slashing, it immediately reignited this national debate, people asking, does the age need to be lowered again? But ultimately, that didn't happen.
Okay. So despite Japanese law trying its best to protect her identity as a minor, Girl A eventually became known by a totally different name. One that would make her, well, infamous across the early internet. Nevada Tan.
Right.
And this is where we really see that kind of unprecedented infamy we talked about earlier. Unlike, say, the Mary Bell case in the 60s, where notoriety was kind of limited by newspapers and TV.
Yeah, traditional media.
Girl A became this global meme almost overnight.
Yeah.
It really highlights the internet's unique power to just amplify and, honestly, distort things.
Her identity was never meant to get out, but a Japanese TV station covering the story, they accidentally doxed her.
Doxed? You mean released her private info?
Yeah, basically revealed private information without consent. They showed some uncensored B-roll footage that's like raw video not meant for the main broadcast showing her schoolwork, and it had her signature on it.
Oh, wow. A mistake, but a huge one.
A huge one. And that's when the internet, which was still kind of the Wild West back then, really latched onto it.
Once that footage was out, it just spread like wildfire, didn't it? Class photos with both Girl A and Satomi in them got leaked online. And in these photos, Girl A was often seen wearing this University of Nevada hoodie from the U.S. University.
Yeah, the Nevada hoodie.
It's still unclear why she wore it, if there was any connection. But regardless, it became this key visual element. And while her real name had been leaked, online users pretty quickly came up with the nickname Nevada Tan.
Right, Nevada from the hoodie.
And Tan, which is like a sort of baby talk cutesy version of the Japanese honorific Chan, often used for kids.
Exactly. And soon enough, Nevada Tan became this full-blown, very early internet meme. It was everywhere for a while.
Fan art, cosplay, really.
Oh yeah, fan art cosplay. A lot of people found this really dark, kind of unsettling humor in the whole thing, the idea that this small, seemingly cute girl could do something so incredibly grisly.
That cognitive dissonance is powerful, I guess.
It really is. And if you need proof of how widespread it got, the University of Nevada actually had to stop selling those specific hoodies. They'd become bestsellers, but obviously for all the wrong reasons.
Oh, man.
Nevada Tan was even dubbed the cutest killer in Japan, which draws these really uncomfortable parallels to other beautiful killer-type viral cases we've seen since.
It's such a stark reminder of the internet's early days, isn't it? Where that kind of edgy humor, sometimes just for shock value, was a real hallmark.
Definitely.
The Nevada Tan thing, it shows more than just early internet weirdness, though. It highlights how this new digital space, without established rules or much moderation, could just grab a real-world tragedy and twist it into something detached, something driven by virality.
Yeah, a spectacle.
It feels like an early blueprint for how we still wrestle with empathy and exploitation online today, doesn't it?
It really does. And the incident, it's had lasting effects on the area, especially as you'd expect, at Okubo Elementary School itself.
How so?
Well, the school decided to designate the anniversary of Satomi's death, June 1st, as a Life Appreciation Day.
Okay.
So on that day, instead of focusing directly on the tragedy, the young students, they gathered for special activities, discussions, creative projects, all designed to reinforce kindness, empathy, and just the value of life.
That sounds like a positive way to handle it.
It seems so. Interestingly, though, they don't explicitly tell the younger students why this tradition started, probably to shield them from the full horror, but still instill the lesson.
Makes sense. And then there was that unsettling coincidence, right? Years later.
Yeah, exactly 10 years after Satomi's murder, in 2014, another student-on-student slaying happened in Sasebo.
No way.
This time, the girls involved were a bit older, high school age, and the murder happened off campus, completely unconnected to the 2004 case. Still, you can imagine it reopened old wounds for the community.
Absolutely.
But it's important to stress, Sasebo doesn't necessarily have, like, a disproportionate amount of juvenile violent crime compared to other places.
It's not like the town itself is cursed or anything.
No, exactly. But when you have these incidents, plus maybe other unrelated cases, you can see how parents and communities might fall back into that moral panic, even if it feels illogical sometimes.
Yeah.
In the end, it might be a tough thing to accept, but there's just no guaranteed way to predict these things. No foolproof way to prevent tragedy from striking. And for many people, that uncertainty is, well, it's paralyzing.
And girl A herself, what happened to her?
As for girl A, by 2008, she was released from the juvenile facility she'd been sent to. She rejoined the general population under a new name, presumably to try and build a new life. Her current whereabouts are unknown.
You just hope.
I just hope she never harms anyone ever again.
This case, it really forces us to confront so many different layers, doesn't it? You have the shocking violence by a child, then this incredibly complex, maybe even impossible search for a clear motive. Mm-hmm. And then this completely unprecedented way the internet grabbed hold of it, processed it, and arguably, distorted the tragedy into something else entirely. It challenges everything we think we know about innocence, responsibility, and how information works online now.
It really compels us, I think, to consider not just what happened, but how society, and especially the internet as it was evolving, then grapples with these unimaginable events. And our constant quest for understanding what part of this story really stands out to you, and how do you think our modern internet, with TikTok and everything else, might handle a similar tragedy today?
That's a heavy question to end on. This case truly leaves us with so many unresolved layers. Thank you for helping us explore this deeply unsettling but also incredibly significant moment where true crime and the early internet collided.
Thank you.
And thank you for joining us on this deep dive. We hope you'll keep exploring complex topics with curiosity. We'll see you next time on The Deep Dive.